Yeah, we've got seltzer and stuff.
Okay.
All right, should be good to go.
Hello. Oh, wow. I did say I was quiet, so there we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to History is a Drag. I'm Tilia Cordata.
I'm just Alex.
Yes, and we are so excited to be invited back for the second year. We've updated our stuff. This is, if you were here last year at all, it's a different presentation. Some of the material might be similar, but not exactly the same. Just to give a brief, what's going to happen tonight, I'm going to talk first about Ithaca specific drag history, and then I will hand things over to just Alex.
And I'll talk about some drag king stuff, some lesbian history, some trans-masculine drag queens, and some drag family stuff.
And then at the end of both presentations, once both have finished, we will come back and there will be a Q&A and discussion. So whatever remaining time, you can ask questions and we can just have a little chat at the end. So yeah, super excited. Thanks everyone for coming.
I'm gonna sit down now.
Yes.
Turn this off.
Okay, so Ithaca drag. How many of you have been to a drag show here in Ithaca? Almost everyone, yes, great. Well, I will say, I'm a little biased, but Ithaca drag is quite exceptional. We have a lot of creative people, we have a lot of new takes, we have a lot of takes on gender that maybe are not always 100% welcomed and seen in other scenes. So Ithaca drag, in my opinion, is probably some of the best drag in upstate New York. We regularly are kind of told this as we travel around and go to other places. People are very impressed by what we bring, impressed by the performances we show. Oh, I should start my timer. And just generally, it is a really amazing place to do drag. So I'm going to talk about drag history and kind of give a overview of the Ithaca drag scene and how we got to this place of really creative drag, really amazing gender-inclusive drag. But before we get there, I have some disclaimers. Drag history, queer history generally, it's not very well recorded. It's not very recorded at all. It is often oral history and storytelling, and it becomes quickly a mythology. So if you are listening to me speak and you're like, I don't think that's exactly how it happened, shh, it's a story. Just play along. Also, drag performers are flaky. I have tried repeatedly for some of this stuff to get statements from these drag performers or accounts or histories, and they often just don't respond, or they will respond to something else instead. So this is from what I've heard, what I experienced, what I've been through, stuff like that, and then also just kind of weaving a through line through everything. We're not going to touch on every single drag performer in the scene. That would take far too long. I have highlighted a handful that have been around for a while or have impacted the scene quite a bit. And we're just going to kind of follow that storyline through. So to orientate ourselves, we have this lovely timeline. We have the pre-House of Merlot days. We have House of Merlot starting in 2012. All of these terms I'll explain later. House of Merlot moves to the range in 2017. Two Tequilas and Gin start in 2018. I also arrive in 2018. The House of Merlot ends in 2019, and the House of Oddities briefly exists. Drag Me to School officially starts in 2019. The pandemic happens. Flame Night Fever, which is a virtual drag and burlesque show, goes from May 2020 to July 2021. And then Thursday's Ithaca, which still exists today, starts in 2021. So we're going to walk through this and kind of cover each of these moments and talk about some of the important moments that occur in these different time points. So pre-House Merlot, there really aren't regular shows that are happening. There's not like a weekly show or a monthly show or a bi-weekly show or a tri-weekly show or a pansexual show. It's really just one-offs every once in a while. There's a handful of performers in town that make these shows happen. A lot of them do happen at Lot 10, which still exists, though it's not the same Lot 10 that existed back then or the Lot 10 that existed when I showed up here. Lot 10 has gone through a lot of iterations. Also Mooney's, which still exists, though is nothing like what it was back then. But there's really not like a central organizing group or central like social media page or anything like that to look to know when shows are happening. They just kind of crop up. One of those people that is making shows happen and performing is Coco Chanel. She claims she's retired, though I feel like every 6 months she posts something that implies she is now performing again, and then she disappears for another 6 months. She hosted these kind of infrequent one-off shows, mostly at Lot 10. As you can see there, that is a poster from one of her shows called Coco Chanel as Grace Jones as Coco Chanel. And that takes place in 2014. And I just also want to highlight at the bottom, you can see there's a $7 cover. If you've been to drag shows in Ithaca, almost all of our shows are $5 or at most $10. So we have not raised the prices any. Well, every other price in town has increased significantly. So if you're interested in coming to drag, it is a great value for your money. But Coco Chanel, a long-standing Ithaca character, still pops through every once in a while. Not performing quite as much anymore, but was a hoot to watch and experience, and it was truly an experience. Another mainstay of the stage at that point was Athena Merlot. She started drag in around 2008. She grew up here in Ithaca, and then she moved to Albany and Syracuse and bopped around a little bit. She semi-retired in 2021. She no longer lives here in Ithaca, but she really is kind of a foundational character in the current Ithaca drag scene. As you can see here, her style, at least at this point, was very Marilyn-inspired, very high femme, glamour, beauty, and I think one of the reasons why Ithaca drag ended up kind of becoming what it is now is largely because of Athena Merlot, and just because, you know, in these photos she's showing really high femme, really like beautiful, pretty girl drag, does not mean that she did not show other drag. In her kind of quote unquote later times of her career, she switched a lot to this kind of glamorous gender. There are no children here. Can I swear?
There's a smallish person here.
Gendery performance where she really kind of threw out the rule book of what a queen or a drag performer can be, can do, and really started playing more with performance solely instead of kind of keeping an aesthetic or a image of a beautifully curated woman, but playing a lot more with that idea and really opened that door to a lot of other folks. I think she was inspired by what was already happening here in Ithaca, but she also really showed that you don't have to stay in one aesthetic box your entire career. She, like I said, she is pretty retired now, though I would not, put it past her not to just show up one day and drag again, because that's just how Athena is. Another long-standing drag performer who is still performing today is Coraline Chardonnay. She is the only true daughter of Athena Merlot. A lot of other folks that were in the House of Merlot, etc., might claim that Athena's their mom, but Coraline was really her daughter. And she started drag around 2014. She's still performing. If you want to see Coraline, you can most regularly see her with me at Drag Story Hour at Buffalo Street Books. We do that every 2 months. But Coraline has also gone through many aesthetic transformations and is now performing in a much more like divine-inspired aesthetic, whereas back then she was still wearing wigs. She almost never wears wigs now. But she's been around for quite a long time. She loves me calling her old. But at this point, like I said, a lot of these shows, they started to be a little bit more organized, have a little bit more planning to them, mild graphic design on their posters. And like I said, they were mostly at Mooney's or a few at Lot 10. This poster on the right, I have this one. This poster here on the right, I believe is one of the very first quote-unquote House of Merlot shows, though it was not branded that way. This poster over here was updated frequently whenever Athena would want to do a show with just a different date, but it was the same kind of image, branding, etc. And because they were kind of planned last minute, there often were not casts listed on them, so a lot of the posters from this era are just the host on the front, and then you would show up and there would be other performers around. But this is kind of the scene at this time. It's just a handful of performers, Athena kind of at the head of it, and shows are starting to get more pulled together. Which brings us to 2012, where the House of Merlot started. So the House of Merlot was started by Trash Vandal, who also went by Kat Von Riesling, Kat Von Dahl, Morgan Trash, multiple other names, and Athena Merlot. Athena would say that she did not start the House of Merlot, that Trash and Benadryl and some others started it and named it after her and then roped her into it. But the House of Merlot really kind of started to try to plan regular shows, and started putting on regular bi-weekly shows at the Range, RIP the Range, it was right across the street, which was our home for a very long time in September of 2017. And then weekly drag shows started happening in June of 2018. To my understanding, they did weekly shows for Pride Month in June, and they went over well, and so they gave them weekly shows starting after that. This article here is kind of covers some of this history, some of the storytelling, and I can't read it here, and I see I don't have a quote from it, but the article itself talks a lot about what I think we talk about a lot now in drag, where they really wanted a space that drag performers of all types could come together and perform, as well as focusing on queer safety, queer community, and queer connection, which is kind of a through line through all of drag's, or Ithaca drag history. The House of Merlot was kind of a loose ragtag group of folks. There was kind of a core group that regularly performed, some of them hosted shows, but when I arrived here and kind of joined the House of Merlot group chat, I believe there was 48 different people in that group chat, and some of them had only performed one time, others had performed, 15, 20 times with the house. So it was kind of a loosely organized group, and also had some folks that maybe weren't performing drag, but helped run shows, helped keep things going. So here in this photo, we have Shelby, we have Leah Davis, we have No Offense, Kitschy Scofflaw is here, Dizzy Discretion, who's back here, Athena Merlot, of course, Kale Green, Veruca Dagger, who's back here, Versailles Von Ives, who's here, and Benadryl, Shelby, Noah. And then we also have this photo that was taken the same day, just on the other side of the street, and that has Trash, Rigatoni, Dusty Box, Jay Tree, and Alicia Day. So this was from Ithaca Fest in 2018, which I also, maybe this was one of these two photos were the only photos of the entire group assembled in one spot. I have not been able to find many others. There's a lot of, cast photos from shows, but not everyone just kind of together. And as you can see, not everyone is together. It's two different photos. And then in August of 2018, I arrived here in Ithaca. And when I arrived here, there were weekly shows at the Range. At this point, because of some disagreements, there were alternating bookings between Trash and Athena. So one week would be Trash, the next week would be Athena. The show vibes were quite different between the two hosts and producers. And Two Tequilas and Gin existed. They hosted a show on the third Wednesdays of every month at Lot 10. And Drag Story Hour happened at Buffalo Street Books on the first Sunday of every month. that had just started a few months before that. And this poster here is the poster of the very first show that I did here in Ithaca. Well, very first show that I did here in Ithaca that I was on the poster. I showed up in drag to a few shows and got put in a show, but this is the first one that I was in a poster itself, and we have some of our favorites that I've already mentioned here. Athena Merlot, Dizzy Discretion, we're hosting. We have Ray DeCorzone down here, will be coming. Myself, dressed as a cat. I'm really not sure why that photo was chosen. And Tesso Tura here. At this point, the posters, they tended to make one poster for an entire month and then just change out the photos, which I found very confusing, and also makes it very difficult to know when different shows were from because it was just often an entire month. But yeah, right at this point, there was weekly drag, you know, a few kind of special events once a month or so. And to some extent, because of disagreements within the House of Merlot and me just not understanding what was all going on, I decided I should start producing shows. So to talk briefly about my favorite thing, which is myself, I started performing drag in Fargo, North Dakota. Yes, Fargo, the place with the wood chipper in the movie, and now there's a TV show and all that. After that, I moved to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and I became part of the drag community there, as well as in Chicago. And then I moved here to Ithaca, and that was about 8 years ago now. And in that time, I realized there wasn't any drag brunch. There was not a lot of daytime drag. So I started drag brunch at Cultivare, which went for several years. I started drag karaoke shows at K-House up in Lansing. I started working with Cinemapolis to do regular movie nights. I started Drag Me to School, which is a drag instructional course that I ran at Cornell now for 7 years. We started working with the Sunset Cruises through Discover Cayuga to do drag shows on their boat. When possible, I brought back drag race viewing parties, brunches, shadowcasts, just a lot of really fun stuff in Ithaca. But before all of this kind of started, again, House of Merlot was going on. There's me in a House of Merlot show. There's Athena being ridden on by a performer named Glimmer. And then I think we have Dizzy over here and Veruca, and will be coming. Athena, myself, Coraline, Kitschy Scofflaw at Lot 10. I think that mural is now covered up by a very large utility box. But these shows were all going on, as well as Two Tequilas and a Gin, which Two Tequilas and a Gin was a bit of a different format. So if you've been to a drag show in Ithaca, you're probably used to a host or two introducing performers, maybe making little jokes and quips, but it's very performance heavy. Most of the show is performers going up, lip syncing, and then getting off stage, host coming up, introducing the next one. Two Tequilas and a Gin was much more focused on hosting and games and audience interaction. So they happened at Lot 10 primarily on Wednesdays. It was an earlier show. They also did a few things at Level B in College Town. And the concept behind this was Athena, Dizzy, and Coraline would be the three kind of constant hosts, and then they would bring on a special guest or two who would join them in hosting, so that it would be kind of 4 or 5 hosts, and each one would host a quarter or a fifth of the show and lead a game and do a number. So there was kind of a mix of audience interaction, drag performances, as well as just kind of hosting and more stand-up vibes, which was a bit of a different twist. And these shows were a lot of fun. They were chaotic and cool and messy in the best way. This was when Lot 10, these shows happened upstairs in Lot 10, and the stage was tiny and in the corner, and there were no stage lights. It was just a very different vibe generally. These shows existed for quite a while up until the pandemic, and then After the pandemic, they returned for a few special shows here and there, but I think Two Tequilas and Gin now is officially retired as of 2021 was their last show. But I've introduced you to Athena, and I've introduced you to Coraline, and I haven't really spent a lot of time talking about Dizzy. So, Dizzy Discretion grew up here in Ithaca. She moved to New York City, and then she moved back here to Ithaca. Last I tried to check with her and get a nailed down date, it was around 2016 when she started. The story that I've been told is she appeared at a karaoke event at Lot 10, and Athena and Coraline were there, and were like, oh my god, you're amazing, and the rest is kind of history. Dizzy is probably one of, if not the most creative drag performer in Ithaca. She is multi-talented, hilarious, funny, incredibly smart. She's a musician, very self-taught. When I first met her, she was like, I've decided I'm gonna learn how to play piano. And I went, that's really hard to teach yourself. And now she plays piano in front of audiences. She makes films and videos. She's just all around an incredibly talented person. And to show off a little bit of that, if this works. You can check out the rest of those videos. There's a lot more on her YouTube channel. It's Dizzy Ditties on YouTube. She has quite a few, and some of them include the old Two Tequilas and Gin performances, as well as just other chaotic creations from her mind. So if you're looking for kind of a exciting little, if you're having a gay video night over at your friend's house, great example of some amazing Ithaca drag. hard right turn. Drag Story Hour started in 2018. Coraline started it at Buffalo Street Books, and then I joined shortly afterwards. We have been doing it since then. We now do it every 2 months at Buffalo Street Books, trying to, offer some more exposure to the amazingness of Ithaca drag to a wider variety of folks. We always say that it is not just restricted to children, but children at heart. Stories now are, I would say, they've always had little jokes and little fun things for the adults to enjoy as well. And it's always a fun time. We often, not as frequently anymore, but we frequently would have guests and special folks come in. We try to feature local authors as much as possible. It's just all around a great time. We have not set the August date, but if you follow Buffalo Street Books, you will get notified of that. Around that same time, Drag Me to School started. So Drag Me to School is a instructional course that I started at Cornell and now have brought kind of out into the community as much as possible. Kitchi Scofflaw, who's featured right here, was the co-instructor for the first few sessions of it. And we tried to kind of teach it collaboratively so you could really pick and choose what gender sides you wanted to choose, because I find at least that good drag kind of picks from each gender and mixes them together and pulls different tricks. No one has one singular contour that works for all queens and all kings, etc. So we taught it together. There also were panels. So here was a drag panel where the audience was able to ask performing drag performers in the area questions, moderated by myself. We've done some version of that a few times now, but it's not necessarily always a part of Drag Me to School. This last year, I was able to find a sponsor to be able to pay for it, to make it more affordable for folks, and so I offered it in the summer, and it was very kind of choose your own adventure. Some folks showed up for one class, some folks showed up for all 5, because 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, all 5. But you could kind of learn whatever parts of drag you wanted to learn. We went over the basics, like covering your brows, just basic foundation, contouring, etc., but also more specific things. People asked questions about wigs, so I brought wig supplies in and we styled wigs together, or they wanted to learn about embellishing outfits. It was really a choose your own adventure there. So if you know any business that wants to sponsor this to make this happen this year, I would love to bring it back, but I refuse to do it for a ticket price of like $500. So need some local beneficiaries to make that happen. But the shows didn't just, as they were coming back after the pandemic especially, we didn't just return to bars. We also started doing things again at Cinemapolis. So this was for a movie night at Cinemapolis that myself and Kitchi Scofflaw hosted. And so we have No Offense over here. We have Femme de Violet, Brooklyn Bridges. Lots of fun, lots of creative locations that we started moving into. This was at TC3, a show that I hosted there for several years. This year had Dizzy and Athena in it, The Cave in Binghamton. So Ithaca Drag really has never been just isolated to Ithaca. It never has just been at one bar. We've always made it work in a lot of different places. Now, the House of Merlot, like I said, ended in 2019. November of 2019 was kind of the last House of Merlot show itself. After the House of Merlot ended, Athena hosted 2 more shows to kind of finish out the year with the range, and that is this one over here, the Drag Me to the 80s show and Fire and Ice, and regular drag at that point kind of ended at the range. So there was no longer regular Thursday shows at the range. There was no longer kind of the alternating host situation. It just kind of all paused. This is a photo of a one-off show that we put together for Dizzy's birthday party, actually. So some more local favorites, you know, Athena Merlot, Veruca Dagger. We have Scorpia Savage, Lala Pennybottom, myself, Coraline, Kitschy, Dizzy. For a little bit, the House of Oddities functioned, which was formed from some of the remaining members of the House of Merlot. In 2019, they hosted 4 shows at the Chanticleer Loft, which for folks that are a little bit newer, it's the 2nd floor of the Chanticleer. It's no longer kind of operational anymore. And this group was led by No Offense and by Benadryl, who I have not spoken about No Offense yet. She started drag around 2016. She currently hosts Cortland Pride, and she was the featured artist of Ithaca's Old Greenie Fringe Fest. So if you came to any of the Fringe Fest shows, I'm sure you saw Noah dressed in this very fishy, because there's a fishtail, dress. This is a rather iconic photo of her where Cortland Pride had protesters present in 2024, I want to say. Noah still regularly performs, still is out and about doing stuff. Very creative, very talented. She makes almost all, if not all, of her outfits. She has really kind of become a mainstay in Ithaca, another drag mother, and just very talented. So whenever you see her on a poster, come to that show. Now, I know we jumped around a little bit, but just to put us back into the timeline, we're at COVID-19. So COVID-19 happens, pandemic shuts everything down, obviously drag shows end. The night that Cornell actually closed everything down and everyone kind of seemed to take it seriously, I had a show at K-House. No one came to it, so it was just myself and Alina Kim, the owner, just by ourselves for like 4 hours, hanging out with no one there. So Drag Me to School continued, but we did it virtually, which if you've ever considered teaching makeup without being able to like physically show people things, you can picture how easy this was to teach virtually for 2 years, when I could not show anything and the person physically had to have the products with them. I could not loan things. But it did work, it happened. And so myself and Kitschy hosted that for 2 years. And we also started Flame Night Fever, which we started in May 2020. And it was produced by myself, Kitschy Scofflaw, like I said, and Leah Davis. We produced 16 virtual shows in 13 months. So if you can do the math, that is more frequent than once a month, but less frequent than twice a month. They started on Zoom, and then there were rules to Zoom. So then we moved to Twitch, but we continued to have a dance party on a Zoom room afterwards for folks to come and engage in community. This one here is the very first one we hosted, and this one is not the last, but it is maybe this is just the second one. I can't even remember. There was too many. But it was fun, and it also kept our scene and our kind of sister and sibling scenes in other areas going, and also connected a lot of drag performers with folks that they would not otherwise be able to perform with. I got really excited with it because I was able to book my friends from back in Milwaukee and Chicago and bring quote unquote some of those performers out here, and really kind of build some of those relationships, and also feature performers who were just starting, who wanted to get involved. So Salix Morrison here had performed at Popped at the Cherry like a few months before the pandemic shut everything down, and that recording was able to be featured in Flame Night, and Salix is now a regular performer. It was just a really great time, and a really great time creatively, because drag performers and burlesque performers were really able to produce their own music videos in a lot of ways, where they could really like edit and make sure it all looked exactly the way that they wanted. We also had to learn how to do video design. kind of a clip reel from our Flamies, which was our award ceremony that we had before we ended the program. This is just a trailer. We generally produced trailers for each one of our Flame Night Fevers. We had a lot of promotion. Everything was virtual, so we needed to let people know. So yes, we pivoted to virtual shows, and then Flame Night Fever kind of became a part of Thursdays at the time. Thursdays initially was envisioned by Amanda Mickey Quinn, with a collaboration between Flame Night Fever, Two Tequilas and a Gin, Whiskey Tango, and DJ dance parties. I believe we did 1 month of that rotation, and then kind of it fell apart because COVID came back. We had to take a break, and then when things started up again, it was just the drag performers, and Kitschy and Leah had moved on to other things at that point, and so it was just me from that original group. And so I created just Thursdays Ithaca, or Thursdays at the Range at that point. That was weekly. In December, we started doing some DJ nights of that year. Weekly shows started in February. Monthly Saturdays started in September of 2022. So once a month, I would have a weekend show as well. This continued for quite a while. And then the Range very suddenly closed in August of 2024 because I'm a glutton for punishment. I gave us no break, and we immediately started at Lot 10, which just had reopened. I made the decision to step down in December of 2024, and Queen, Essential, and Scarlet Hills are now the lead producers. They continue to produce the Thursday shows, and they have launched at 5 and Dime. So if you were looking for bingo, a little bit earlier show, those happen every other Saturday at 5 and Dime, starting at 6 p.m. now. So that, Thursdays continues to kind of be the main central home for drag here in Ithaca. They're a great showing, great time. I would highly recommend going to one of them. Again, they are just $5, so they are quite affordable. Just an example of some posters. This first one was when we started to bring things back. Coraline and I were like, wow, we're just gonna do another drag show. The Green Show, which Noah has made an annual thing now. This was the first poster. It looks very pixelated because it was actually a GIF. She somehow sent me a GIF instead of a poster. And then last year, this talk was in collaboration with a Thursday event. So that is History as a Drag Show over there, where we had some brief historical talks before each of the numbers, hosted by myself and just Alex. We're not doing that this year, but it was a lot of fun. Thursday continues to be a great time and a great place to kind of find community, see amazing drag, and just kind of hang out. So I'm running a little bit long, so I'm going to try to wrap it up. But in the kind of description of this talk, it talks about how we got here, how this drag scene happened, how things ended up the way that they are here. And I want to be very clear that none of this was done in isolation. None of this was done just because I existed here. The drag scene here is incredibly collaborative. It is incredibly, it values shared input and shared kind of governance and leadership a lot. There's just so much energy to support creativity and performing arts here that I think already existed, and then we've just really amplified and focused our energy on. And central to all of this has really been a understanding and care for the fact that in Ithaca we don't have a gay bar, we don't have a queer space, we don't have queer center. So our drag shows really are kind of the queer space that happens. I often say, like, in Ithaca we don't have a gay bar, but like once a week a bar in Ithaca becomes a gay bar, and it happens that way because we're there. And I think all of us take this responsibility very seriously and understand that part of our job as drag performers and drag producers is to make that space as safe and welcoming and inclusive as possible. And that involves really accepting all forms of drag, all types of drag, and all audience members and attendees. And also we have really benefited from that reality of not having a regular reoccurring gay bar or show that we have to like uphold norms for. We have been able to see what has caused drag shows or gay bars or gay spaces in the past to become problematic or uncomfortable or difficult to attend, and kind of proactively plan around that. You know, when I brought Thursday back as mostly drag shows, like I implemented rules to make sure that we were not just booking all queens, that we were not just booking white performers, that we were keeping these things in mind as we produced and created our shows, and that kind of value system has permeated, I think, most, if not all, of our spaces now. And also just, you know, because there's some uncomfortable news that has come out recently about other local drag performers and scenes. Drag performers and drag hosts and drag producers are kind of uniquely positioned in terms of visibility and influence and community space to be leaders in the community. Not everyone necessarily. That doesn't mean that everyone that is a drag performer should end up being a leader in the space, but I do think the ones in Ithaca really have taken that to heart and followed through on that and taken that really seriously. And so I think everything that you're seeing, all of this history that you're seeing, none of it happened really by accident. Everyone really took this job seriously and followed through with it. There has been accidents and happy accidents all the way around, but our goal was never to just produce a drag show. It was to produce a community and a community space. And I think that shift in focus away from just performing and just making a show happen to making a space where a community can exist is really the big difference that I see in our scene versus other scenes. And yeah, shameless self-plug. If you would like to come see some of this amazing local drag, Alex and I are doing a collaboration with the Hangar Theater on Thursday. So if you go to the Hangar for Fun Home on Thursday, we will be doing a pre-show drag show starting at 6:30. And then there will be a brief social where you can hang out with us, chat with us, all of that. Stay at the Hangar, watch Fun Home, and then follow us all over to Lot 10 for an after-party show. So you get drag, theater, drag show, where we will have amazing talents from Dante Picante, Ike Silvers, Tony Nominee, Seaweed, and Motor Dyke, as well as Alex and myself. It's gonna be a great time. If you're gonna check out one drag show this June, I would recommend, doing this one. And with that, I think I will hand things off to Alex, and we will come back for some questions at the end. Thank you all.
Should have put that in. Hey, can you hear me okay? Okay. Hey, what up? It's Alex. Do I have a mouse? It's over here. Where did she go? Hold on. We're going to just try again. How many of you were here last year or saw what I did? We got one. We got one in the back. Yeah, I couldn't imagine it was you. Okay, I don't have all that much time, which I will forgive Tilia for, maybe. So I'll just try and speed through some stuff. And the important things are about drag family, drag play at the end. And I do have Tilia to thank for that, so she is forgiven. Okay, ready? I got it. All right, so lovely little opening slide, a little pixelated there, but this is my drag family, and so I wanted to make sure to start with that. Tilia is my drag mother and also my spouse, so that's a little hint at how drag is what it is. It's a little messy, it's fun, and I was doing my PhD, we're on a little leave right now, up at Cornell, and when I moved here in 2019, this is not what I thought my research was going to be about. It was about queer things and queer history. But it became a passion of mine in the archive, looking at photos. I'm in the music program, and I was looking at punk history, and I'll show you the photo that got my attention later on. But I was looking at queer community building, and Tilly and I worked together at the LGBT Resource Center, where she taught Drag Me to School, which will also come up again, and that's how I started drag a little bit. But we were at a work conference talking about queer community building, and she was telling me all about drag and some of the things she just told you, and I went, holy, that sounds really cool, and like what I am interested in. So our interests has kind of converged that way, and I'm going to try and do a little bit of that with some of my history stuff here, and show you how I've really sort of decided and figured out how music, communities, and drag and play are all intertwined and important parts of community and family stuff. So performance order that we're going to go through real fast together. We're going to talk about Stormy DeLavery. Does anyone know who she is? We got a couple nods. Robin Tyler, who a lot of people don't know, and we'll give you a little quick intro on that. I'm going to talk about drag kings and the 90s explosion of that. Amazing. And then I'm going to talk about myself. We love to talk about myself. So, Stormy. So, when I start talking about lesbian history, I love to start with Stormy. So that's Stormy in the center there. Now, there's lots of mythology around her. Some people like to think that she is the person who was part of the Stonewall Uprising, not the person who threw the brick, but person who was in the cop car. She claims it was not her. But she was at the Stonewall riot in 1969, and that is pretty much confirmed by other people. She is someone who was a musician at the time. She was a self-appointed guardian of the lesbians of New York City. And she was a singer with big bands in the 40s. So she was on bills as Stormy Dale and was sort of seen as a female vocalist with a deep baritone voice, which I love as me as in drag. As me as just Alex. So she ended up as a drag performer, and that's what I am going to talk about a little bit. So the Jewel Box Revue was a drag sort of show that happened from the 30s all the way through the 60s. And she was the MC for the show and also sang in it. So this is a quote from one of the queens in the show in a historical interview with her. And they say, the Jewel Box Revue was not considered drag, but female impersonation, which was the term often used at the time as well. But big elaborate shows, showgirl type feathers, lights, so what we might think of as drag. So the Jewel Box was not considered drag, but female impersonation. There were 25 men and 1 woman. The object was to fool the audience into believing we were real women. The real woman was Stormy DeLavery. She sang 1 song and was the MC for the show. Stormy was a great craftsman. When I met her, I thought she was a straight man. Perhaps the stage manager? She was always professional and very sweet to me. The show consisted of 3 production numbers interspersed with a featured acts, chorus numbers, and costume or showgirl parade. At the end, we removed our wigs and introduced the real girl, which is Stormy. So I love this little quote because her whole thing was to sort of be confusing, and that's what I think drag is, right? We're kind of confusing but playful with the audience. Is it impersonation? Is it confusion? Is it just artistry? It's all of the above. And I think Stormy is a great example of someone who is an early lesbian figure who was also a drag artist, who people couldn't quite put in a box and still kind of can't. And so here's Stormy over here. And this is in the 90s, yeah, the 90s community center, I think. Yes, it says that there. And that's her on the mic with some 90s drag kings, which we'll talk about in a second. And she's talking about the Stonewall uprising. She's talking about her history. She was still just a very present figure in New York City throughout her time, as much as she could be on a mic. She's a private person, but was happy to share history, and I think that's important part of intergenerational community building, which I think is an integral part of drag. And I love that this old little advertisement for the Jewel Box Review, so you can get a sense of what that might have looked like. So, yeah, that is my quick clip on Stormy, and I'm gonna move to Robin Tyler. So, in my little PhD research, Robin is somebody that got my attention right away because I found this little clipping right here at the top. It's the yellow one. I don't know if you can see it. Oh, there we go. We found it. So it says, "Cop grabs 44 in dresses and a real girl in slacks." So this comes from, at the time, there was a lot of laws, and we're not going to go into that, about how many articles of clothing of your assigned gender you had to be wearing while you were out in public at a thing. So at the time, Robin had just moved from Canada, which is also a connection to me, because she had heard from this big lesbian organization called the Daughters of Bilitis that the way to find other lesbians was to move to a big city. She also wanted to be famous to show business. So she went, "I'm moving to New York City. This is the way to find all the lesbians." And one of her first nights in New York City, she went to a drag ball. And so the cops raided the place, as they were to do in this moment, and they came across Robin and thought that she was one of these female impersonators. She was wearing pants at the time, but they were like, "Obviously, she's one of the men. We got to take her in." And so she thought this was hilarious, which is good, that is the way that went for her. Many stories don't end that way. But she used her one phone call in the jail cell to call the New York Post and tell them about this, and that's where this little excerpt comes from. So finding this in the archive during my research, I was like, who is this? Tell me more. And so she came to Manhattan, ends up in this, and was like, hold on a second, if they think I am a female impersonator, what if I was a female impersonator? Though I am assigned female at birth, and she identified as a woman. And that's what she did. She worked at similarly a impersonation show or a drag show for a long time as a Judy Garland impersonator. She went, okay, well, they think I'm one, why can't I be one? And I love this. She just ran with it, and they were like, okay, sure. So similarly to Stormy, she was kind of an MC, she sang a song with them, but she also just worked as an impersonator, and part of the thing was, is she a real girl, is she not? And she just let it happen. So this is her in her little Judy Garland sort of, Liza sort of vibe here. It's one of her personas at the time in Club 82. And I love her. She becomes a comedian, which you might know that Harrison and Tyler duet that comes up about later. But she had a great comedy special released by Olivia Records, which is a very famous lesbian record company through the 70s through 2000s. And instead of a music record, they released their first comedy album, and it's just a live comedy show, and it's Robin Tyler, and one of the acts in it is her, and it's called Rolls, and it's her telling the story of how she was taken up in this little raid. So Robin Tyler is an amazing person who I really have enjoyed researching, and she becomes a political figure who she's still quite active as a political activist. She also has become a real champion of trans folks, which I think is an important part to think about in terms of lesbians, because lesbians are told, we are told lesbians aren't funny, which is a lie. And two, told that there's a lot of trans, non-inclusion by lesbian communities, and that's too much to get into right now. But Robin loves to prove that wrong. So she, I'm just gonna make sure that I'm trying to go through fast, but I'm gonna look through things quickly. Okay, yeah. So here's her in Club 82. Again, love to see which one is she, who's to say. I do have a suspicion of which one she is, but this is how lovely and extravagant these shows were. I went too fast. There we go. In the middle here, this is her at a college show. So she ended up as a comedian for a while. She's also a musician. And she went around in college tours because no one would hire them after they did a very political moment, insinuating they were lesbians on an ABC show, basically. And so they lost their big TV deal, her and her partner, like romantic partner and comedy partner, who she met at Club 82, who was heckling her on stage, which I think is great. And so they started touring women's colleges, essentially. And they were a great act for colleges, as you might assume if you were a IC student and a Cornell student. They were just like a cheap, for this cool school way to get people to a room together and laugh, But they were told not to be too political, and Robin always pushed the envelope as far as she could. But one of my favorite things is they found in Boston Max Feldman, and Max Feldman ends up at the Michigan Women's Music Festival, another big lesbian music festival that becomes quite famous. Max's song opens every year after Max ends up performing there. But Max had been kicked out of the Boston music scene for being kind of too gender ambiguous, and was not allowed in to perform at this women's college and this college performance. And Robin was like, absolutely not. And this is a photo of Robin introducing Max. They give their record deal to Maxine Feldman, give her time on a record to make sure that she can have her music published. Max uses every pronoun before her death, their death, his death, whatever you want to say. And Max's music is really cool. One of the songs is called Angry at This, which is a fun lesbian little thing, inside joke, I think, there. But I love that Robin was like, no, absolutely not. I will just be the person who introduces Max and make sure that he gets his time on stage. The other thing that I wanted to point out was Robin was the host of the West Coast and Southern Music and Comedy Festival, a rival of the Michigan Women's Music Festival, and they happily employed trans women. They had a trans fire marshal and festival host, and she just was like, they say that they hate trans people. Does anyone here? No? Nobody hates them? Okay, great. We're going to keep employing them. And so she's just been a political activist the whole time. Also, her and her partner were one of the first people to get married, same-sex marriage in California. And I think she's great. And she was just a little drag artist? We don't know. You know what I mean? And that's what I think is so fun, is this gender play. So now a quick perusal into the 90s. This is Moby Dick, who I talked about last time. I think these are fantastic photos. So in the late 80s, I think it was 89, kind of like Drag Me to School, Moby Dick came across a King for a Day workshop and was like, I want to learn how to put on makeup and look like a little guy, or a big guy, but Moby Dick's pretty small. So little guy. And he visited P-Town, Provincetown, and also was like, this is really fun after meeting a lot of drag queens, and was like, so what if I took a class on how to do that? And he did. So Moby Dick is called, quote, one of the founding fathers of the modern drag king movement. In 95, he opens up Club Casanova, which, similarly to here, is not an actual place, but a weekly drag show and party. He has a feature on the MTV show. I guess it was called Y2K Drag Kings. I haven't seen much of it. And also, if you go to dragkinghistory.com, which is now filed with Library of Congress, you can see every drag king and their history, and Moby Dick is doing this mostly himself. So I think it's really cool. He is logging famous drag kings around town, but also smaller town drag kings, which I think is cool. So a quick little tour into Club Casanova, where, quote, everyone is treated like a king. It was at the Pyramid Club in New York City for 3 weeks. It was then in Coney Island High, apparently, and then it had a little place on 99th Ave. There was a drag king working the door. There was drag king DJs. There were drag king go-go dancers. There was a drag king MC, and then there was a drag king show. So in the 90s, the guys were the kings. They decided, especially in bar culture at this time, they decided that it was time. It was time for them to shine. And it was lesbians, it was straight women, it was people in between. And I think it's amazing to see that this is sort of what happened. And they didn't have a home because no bar wanted that to be a standing thing. But Moby Dick moved them around, and they worked together to make sure that there was a recurring show, which I think is a lot of what we're seeing in Tilia's presentation too, is that there was not a home for it, but there was a need for it, so they made a home for it, you know what I mean? So here's some of the Calo Casanova regulars. This is Dredd, who was the first drag king of the year, and I think his work is amazing, and a lot of little gender ambiguity there. And we can see that there's lots of different styles too that start emerging, and some of them we see kind of today. We see the little muscles, we see a little cowboy, we see a little, I don't know, like 90s boy band kind of inspired, and we see some like, you know, more sensual things too, which I think is great. And Moby Dick, you know, when they were closed, and the 90s, you know, resulted in a lot of closures of bars at the time and queer parties and things like that. They didn't give up then either, and Moby Dick was like, I think that the world needs to see what drag kings are more than New York City, and toured North America for a long time, bringing a group of drag kings, alternating who that was too, so that more people could see what drag king artistry was. Moving briefly, so I promised you a photo of what made me interested in drag stuff and gender play and my own gender discovery, and that's this one here. So this is Silas Howard and Harry Dodge, and they are known as the Dodge Brothers. This is them too. They have a great film that's out, actually getting a re-release right now, which is called By Hook or By Crook. I encourage you to go look it up. It is an incredible film that they made, which is like a T for T buddy film, like a little guy's film, and it's gender ambiguous and silly and fun. But they also opened up a place called Red Dora's Bearded Lady, which was a cafe. They stole electricity from the place next door. They were backed onto a tattoo parlor. They were like a place for, which you can kind of see the tattoo sign there. It was in San Francisco in the Mission District. And they were sort of like an open mic place. You could put on a punk show there. A lot of really important spoken word artists came through the space. And they just wanted there to be a queer space for people. And they made their movie there as well. And they were part of, Silas was part of a band called Tribe 8, which I looked at too. But I love this photo because they are just having fun with their friends. And some people put on to them and making music. And they were like, you're drag kings. And they went, okay, we're drag kings. If that gets us gigs, we're drag kings. And I love that because they were just literally dressing up and having fun. They're in a great photo album book by one of the artists at the time, Chloe Sherman, their friend. And you can see that lots of people at the time were just having lots of fun dressing how they wanted to. And they just were called drag kings and they went with it. So they did, and I think it's a great example of like, it's just gender play and family and fun, and they just wanted to host a queer space. So what does drag king look like today? We're moving real fast. Here is a real famous one, well, relatively, Tenderoni. Have you heard of Tenderoni? Some of you. He was on the most recent season as a guest judge on King of Drag, which is also over here, which was, the Kings got a little show this year. And it's, I think, renewed, yeah. Kind of like Drag Race, but for drag king artistry. And that's Murray Hill, who's also appeared in the 90s, 80s, 90s in New York City, still performing today, hilarious. Two different styles, as you can see, of drag king artistry. Tenderoni's kind of giving kind of like a kitschy scofflaw, kind of like, as we just saw in Tilia's presentation, bold lines, facial hair, you know. And Murray Hill's just like, your dad, you know, like, ha ha. And I think it works. You can also see some of the artistry here today, too. So drag king artistry has moved into lots of different things, and I wanted to show you some of Ithaca's drag kings and things right now. Anyone recognize some of these folks? We got some nods. So some very special people to me are in here too. We got Butch Light, David Glowy or Blow Me, Dante Picante, Scope Kaleido, Ike Silvers. Here is a show from the range where we have, I think, Scope, Salvador Estrano, David, James Ballin, and Butch. Here is, I think, the show from here where we mentioned Will Be Coming, and he's this crazy little creature right here. And this was from Pride. Just last week, we got Jacques and Dante in their little heated rivalry getup, which I think is amazing. So as you can see, we got lots of different styles going on and a huge emergence of drag kings and things and those in between here in Ithaca, which is important. And I have a quote here from David from last year's Pride. There's a great photo of him in this outfit that he made. And I asked if there was anything you wanted to share, what would it be? And so David said, drag has become a conversation with myself. Every costume, makeup, brushstroke, and musical choice is a reflection of David and Morgan, which is David's legal name. To get to know someone, you need to take the time to converse and listen. Use your senses. Drag has given me that time and space to bring my full self into reality. Yes, on stage I am David, but I am also Morgan. I don't hide on the stage, and that has become true off stage as well. I express myself the way I want as the ginger snap dandy of Ithaca. Drag invites me to embrace the joy and freedom that is unbound by conditions and society. And I love that quote. I love David. And I think that it goes back to Stormy and it goes back to Robin. And they were just like, I'm doing what I want and it doesn't matter who defines what drag is. Because drag is play and drag is being who you are. So while a lot of, I'm going real fast, but while a lot of, drag kings are people who are lesbians or gender nonconforming or transmasculine folks, I, started drag with Drag Me to School and the Cat's Angelical Ball. And I was like, well, I'm gender nonconforming in that way. Maybe I should be a cat that's a boy cat. And I was. And I did another show, which was a Mamma Mia shadow cast, and I was a boy character. And both of those made me so uncomfortable. So I, now dress up in a very femme way. And I wanted to talk quick second about how transmasculine folks can also be drag queens. For myself, I'm over here, as she couldn't recognize me. I have found, drag it's a very, cliche thing to be like, drag helped me figure out my gender. And at first I was like, that's not true for me. It's making me like, go back and enjoy parts of my old gender, if you can say that as a non-binary person. But I think at this point, it really has helped me figure out like, oh, I'm just like a very gay boy. And I have to experience my femininity through masculinity, if that makes any sense to any of you. For those of you who are maybe trans, you maybe get it more. But I grew up as a girl, loved dressing up, loved all the classic gay boy things, and I never questioned my gender for a really long time. But then I started doing it, and then when I did, I was like, well, obviously I have to be a drag king. That's what drag is, right? But once I embraced being a queen, it all sort of started clicking in my real life too, kind of like what David's saying. It's like, I can be myself off stage as well. So I wanted to bring in some other queens here. We got Gottmik, classic from RuPaul's Drag Race. It feels cliche to say representation is important, but seeing Gottmik on Drag Race helped me understand who I was and who I could be. And she made people really upset with this little number here, which was her top surgery runway, and I loved it. And I wanted to bring in another Ithaca connection here. This person has performed in Ithaca and is a friend of No Offense. And can I read it? No. Let's see if I can, real small. This is Hudson Aberqueer from Texas, and it says that Hudson is a resident of San Antonio who has been performing as a drag entertainer since 2018, getting his start as a drag king. His art has transformed over the last few years into a high femme drag queen fantasy. He is the first and only trans man to win Drag Me to Fame and secure a permanent cast position with the Ray Lopez Entertainment. Hudson uses his position to advocate and try to make space for other AFAB, assigned female at birth, drag entertainers. A firm believer in drag inclusivity, Hudson makes it his mission to make it known that this is an industry that accepts everyone and anyone. All right, you can read that kind of. So I just wanted to emphasize that drag is, again, just not what you always think it is. And an important part that has been for me is finding community. That's not what I thought that I was going to do when I joined that little Cats production. And Tilly was like, you want to tap dance? And I went, yeah, I want to tap dance. I didn't think I was going to find my gender. I didn't think I was going to find people that mean the world to me. But that's what drag is. And this intergenerational teaching, I think, is an important part of what drag really can be and supporting each other off the stage as well. So this is some of the Cordata family. Like I said, Tilia is my drag mom and also my spouse. And I think that also emphasizes how important the family part of this is. And it's like an ambiguous thing, but we're here for each other no matter what. So Tilia taught me how to do drag, as well as Chutney Houston, who is, if we can, and David, and Debita, who is over here. And also up here. And Like It or Not, all in the Drag Me to School program. So, but we've also done drag lots of other ways and been taught in other ways as well. But we also have Scope Kaleido, who is an incredible drag artist as part of our family. Butch Light, Seaweed, Solitude, and these people are people we hang out with off the stage. They're people who, here is Scope and David and I at Central New York Pride a couple weekends ago. And Scope invited us to be part of this performance, and he didn't have to do that, but he wanted to share that experience with us. And I am just really, really grateful for being able to be taught queer history from people like Tilia, being able to find people who love to just play and just have a silly time, who can be like, hey, I don't know how to sew this thing, or how would you make this thing? And Tilia's like, you don't have to waste materials, just come to my house and I'll help you how to do that. And to hear Scope be like, we set off the fire alarms trying to figure out how to build this thing, and Tilia can sass him out and be like, you could have just come to my house. And I love that, but as somebody who I'm not always comfortable in nightlife spaces also, it is really nice to have people who are there for me, who I can go to. I'm experimenting with sobriety, and, they are there and they get that I need support sometimes. And they are there to help me get ready. They're there to send silly, silly photos of Tilia as a clown and to laugh with me. And so I think it's an important part of the drag scene that is often missed. People think that people are catty or competitive, but what I think is most important is the way we build each other up. So I wanted to end my presentation that I sped through just like that. So thank you.
Yay.
All right. Tilia, you want to come back up? Yeah.
So we have some time if anyone has any questions.
Yeah, we have a little bit of time.
Yeah. Yes.
Your drag me to school,
Mhm.
the ones you did on Zoom,
Yes.
did y'all save those and maybe put them on YouTube or something?
We didn't. Privacy concerns mostly. And because it's so interactive, it's kind of hard to separate specific lessons out. Yeah.
Why did most of the flyers say you had to have an ID and had to be over 21?
A lot of it is the venues that we're performing at itself require attendees to be 21 plus. I will say the bingo shows at Five and Dime now happen early enough in the day and also serve food, so those are all now all ages. And my brunch shows generally are pretty all ages as well. But a lot of them are just in bars, and you have to be 21 to enter.
Great presentation, by the way. I really learned a lot, I feel like. I think earlier in the presentation, one of you mentioned that you have volunteers as a part of the local drag scene in Ithaca. If one were interested in volunteering, is that something that's open to community members, perhaps outside of Tilia Cordata, or how would you get involved?
Go for it.
I think I might have mentioned that when we were talking about the House from Merlot. Yes, of course. If you're interested in performing, there's always tip spots, but there's also always demand for folks just to help out, make sure someone's watching the cash box or collect tips if we don't have a tip spot. I would say you're always welcome to show up to a show and ask if there's anything you can do, or message the show host and see if there's anything you can get involved in that way. Yeah.
I'm gonna jump in also. When I started being like, wow, drag is really cool, Tilia, when back to that story, I didn't start drag right away. I just started going to shows. And I was an avid fan at the front, being like, wow, I love you, Noah. I love you, Tilia, and also Femme. And I was just so quick to be like, hey, do you need help? You guys are in a lot of outfit. You can't bend over really well. Do you want me to get on the stage and grab your tips for you and hand them to you? Or pick up your thrown discarded items, which is also a thing at Five and Dime. People are just throwing clothes off, not to get naked, but reveals. So I would be like, hey, I'm the little person who will help you grab your stuff. And that's a great way to get to know people and also show hey, I'm really interested in being part of this. I've also had people message me on Instagram to be like, I want to be in your show. And I'm a great way to just show that you're interested is come to shows often. If you want to perform, that's a great way to do it. Introduce yourself to the host, but if you just want to be part of it, just come talk to us in whatever way you want to be part of something, and I'm sure we want help with whatever. So we just like are excited that people are excited.
Any other questions? What was the movie that you recommended that you liked so much?
It's called By Hook or By Crook. And so it's a 90s movie that Silas Howard and Harry Dodge made together. It's like a buddy film, and they made it on no budget at all. And it's been re-released this year. It's a limited re-release in theaters, but it's also now accessible online in lots of places, and in HD. Also, I can help. We should have a little viewing party of it because I have access to it through my time at Cornell when I was able to take that. It's just an incredible movie. It's silly, it's heartfelt, and it's sort of like, you don't really get to see a lot of buddy shows that are by two trans mask folks. And the punk scene in San Francisco, not New York, just like made it happen with no budget, and you can see them all throughout it, like putting on little outfits, and you're like, hey, that's the same person that was over there. And you can see scenes where they're like, oh yeah, that was real life. Like we stole all these coins and from a vending machine to get into another show later and things like that. And it's great. So it's called By Hook or By Crook. They're both very famous now. And he's a director. Like Silas is a famous director, and Harry is like a very famous artist. So yeah, it's cool to see some of their OG stuff. Anything else?
Is there a lot of overlap with the burlesque shows in Ithaca? With like your drag shows?
Yeah, somewhat. I mean, Scarlett Kills, one of the lead producers of Thursdays now, is a drag-lesque artist. So she does drag and burlesque. Whiskey Tango Sideshow often has guest performances from drag performers. There's often guest burlesque performers in the drag shows. So there's a lot of mixing back and forth. We're all friends. It's a small town. But yeah.
Yeah, Scarlett, being one of the producers now, has had a couple of like open stages that are like open burlesque or queerlesque stages, which has been cool to see some of those artists come in there. Seaweed, one of our little new drag family members, does both, which is also very cool.
What was the drag show that you first ever saw?
Who to?
Like you both, you.
Here
Yeah.
or like broadly?
You go ahead.
Here specifically or generally?
Or in general?
Do you want to answer?
I think the very first drag show I saw, well actually I know this, was a Pride drag show at Fargo Pride in 2015, 16? 15. And it was like all ages in a very small like black box theater type situation. I had no idea what I was walking into or what was gonna happen or if I had to be on time or late. I was late. It somehow started on time, which is not a common thing in drag. And yeah, I just remember like watching it and being like, oh, these performers like make their own stuff and they're up there performing and they're having fun and they're so funny. And I was like, I really want to do that. And then just kind of like pestered one of them until they helped me out.
My first drag show ever, I was going to respond to your text message, stranger, about Toronto stuff, which is where I lived before here, at a bar called Cruise and Tangos, and I had no idea what I was walking into. I also have learned that that's not normally how drag works. It's like it's a 2-floor bar. The first floor has the drag show, and you cannot get to the stage. There is like a first row that can interact with the stage, and everyone else is sort of like packed in, and like the entertainers do not get off the stage. They can't really take tips, and they do like many numbers at a time. So that's what I thought drag was, and I was like, that's really cool. It's very dance numbers and like skinny queens doing flips for like no tips. And so that's what I thought drag was for a while, and I was like, that's kind of cool. And my first drag show here that really changed what I thought was my very first week living here. I went to your brunch at Cultivare before I had any idea who Tilia was. I wouldn't for many years. And I saw you specifically do a number with Vacuum, and I was like, drag can be funny, drag can be slower, drag can be like campy and like smart, and also in a very different venue where I get to eat food and sit down. Back to the sobriety thing too, I don't have to partake in that. And I had so much fun, and then I met you years later and went, oh my God, it's you. That's so funny. But one of the people in my department invited me to go to that show, and so I went with a bunch of people I had not met before, and it was at Cultivar.
I took photos of them. Like, they asked me to take photos of them. Not with me and them.
No, me and my friends.
Just them.
I have one video of my friend that I was there for, and Tilia's in the back, like, judging them, and I went, wait, I'm married to you now.
The
That's
performer
fine.
was very late and did not send music until that morning. It was a long story.
Yes, but that was my first Ithaca drag show, and I think that's very funny. It also really changed, what I thought drag could be, so I'm appreciative of that. There was lots of different performers, and I think Dizzy was in that show also.
Yes.
Yeah. My friends and I had a joke for a long time about there was an announcement. We had no idea what Ithaca was, right? And someone was from Geneva. You did not say New York. You were just like, all the way from Geneva, and we did not know that a Geneva, New York existed. So we were like, Switzerland? What do you mean? It took us many years to figure out what you meant by that.
Yes.
All right. Well, it's 7:32.
Ooh.
Oh, we
Are we
could
going to
be-
get kicked out?
Any other final thoughts, questions,
Comments, concerns?
dirty words? Polite ones.
That was really, really great. It
Aw.
was really wonderful to see that whole scope of the history and learn so much more. Thank you both so much.
If you have any other history questions, I'm a big nerd. You can DM me on Instagram, and I'll give you sources. I'm in the archives. I'll give you anything. Happy to share. Thank you for being here. I'm so appreciative that you all came out.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
And that intergenerational learning moment also, that's important. Thank you.
And hopefully we see folks on Thursday at the Hangar Theater and at Lot 10. It's going to be a great time. If you want to more directly support us, come to the one at Lot 10 because we actually get that money. But come to both. Support local theater and art. It's going to be a great show.
That would be